in the world does Little House on the Prairie have to do with living paycheck to paycheck? In this video, I found some really fantastic life lessons watching Little House on the Prairie that I thought I would share with you today. Hi everybody, my name is Sarah. Thank you so much for watching. If you don't know me, I'm the owner of frozenpennies.com. I'm a financial coach, and as a family, we are debt-free. Sometimes I fall down the rabbit hole of the Little House on the Prairie series. It's just a classic for me. It's something that I've always loved, and I got to thinking there are a lot of really great money tips here. These are old-fashioned money tips that everybody can benefit from. I mean, really, some of these things we really should go back to. So while I was going through my head, I was wondering if there was a way to stop living paycheck to paycheck using the stories of Little House on the Prairie. Brilliant, I know. Absolutely brilliant. Let me share what I found with you. Okay, before I go on, I just want to reiterate what I mean by paycheck to paycheck. You get your paycheck and it's used to cover necessary expenses without any money left over. Sometimes not enough money to cover your expenses. So you're waiting constantly for the next paycheck so you can pay or purchase what you need to purchase from that. And it's a vicious cycle that people get into because there's never any money left over. So what we need to do is figure out a way to have a little bit of a cushion between paychecks. For many, this means that they just don't have the money, so they have to have more. And for others, this just means managing your money a little bit better. So one of the ways to do this is to be brave. Take a really hard look at what you're spending, look at your bank statements, see where you're spending your money. So many people are so nervous about how much they're spending and how much money they don't have, they avoid looking at their bank statements. They don't want to know how much they're spending, and they don't want to know what they're spending their money on. Yet they're so anxious and concerned about the fact that they don't ever seem to have enough money that they still don't want to know. So being brave, just like the Ingalls family was brave when they moved to Walnut Grove and had nothing. They moved from Wisconsin to Walnut Grove with just very little on a wagon. Many settlers and many pioneers had to truly be brave to find the life that they were promised on these flyers. They thought the American dream was to settle on these properties and build a life for themselves. So it really had a lot to do with facing their fears, being brave, and taking a chance. That's what I want you to do today. Take a chance and look at where you're spending your money. Try using a cash-only system. The cash-only system will allow you to micromanage your money so you're knowing where every penny is going and you're spending your money purely intentional. The Ingalls family always used cash, except for that one time they got into debt, which I'm going to talk about later. They always used cash and settled up what they needed at Olson's store when they purchased. Using cash today is an inconvenience, but so is running out of money before you get paid again. So if we can now this doesn't necessarily have to be forever. Maybe it's just for now. Maybe you can try using a cash-only system for a little while. Even though you know it's going to be an inconvenience, you're going to have to go inside and pay for your gas, or you're going to have to take a little bit of extra time at the grocery store to make sure that whatever's in your cart you have the cash for. You probably won't be able to use online grocery shopping, but if you go in with $100 and that's all you have, you know that you can only spend $100. It's going to retrain your brain a little bit as to staying within your means and finding cheaper ways to do so. Let's talk about meal planning. We all know that the Ingalls family ate what they had. If they didn't have it, they weren't going to eat it. So they had to plan their meals about what they actually own. They were very self-sufficient for most things. Farm animals were raised for their meat and their eggs and their milk. Crops were planted, specifically wheat. The only things that they didn't grow themselves were sugar and coffee. The rest of the foods they worked hard all spring, summer, and fall so they could put away enough food in order to feed them through the winter. They ate from their stockpile. They knew the things that they had, and they made their meals around that. If you need a little bit of help with your meal planning, I'm going to leave a link below to a meal planning toolkit that's completely free for you that you can download. Next, get organized, think minimally, do not have more than you need. Carolyn and Charles had a small home. They had a loft upstairs for the two girls, and Carrie stayed with them in a small bed in their bedroom for years. And everything was really minimal. They only had what they needed. There was a couple of rocking chairs for downtime, but most of the time they sat at the table. There were no couches. I didn't even think of that until right now. There was no couch. Now, my boys had actually shared a room, just like the Ingalls girls did, for 18 years. We had such a small home that they didn't have room for separate bedrooms until we were able to add on to our house. Think minimally, use what you have, only use what you have. Consider minimal decorations and major usefulness of what you do own. Budget and prioritize your debt. In an episode called The Richest Man in Walnut Grove, Charles thought that he was getting a big payday from the sawmill. So he went and ran up a pretty big debt at Olson's Mercantile. Then the sawmill deal fell through. So they had to pull together as a family to get this debt paid off. Charles was feeling really, really bad about it. But as a family, they were aware that this happened, and they banded together to knock this debt out as fast as possible. Charles dug ditches as well as worked at the sawmill. Carolyn ran the entire farm so Charles could work more. Mary stopped going to school for a little while just so she could take on sewing projects. And Laura, with the help of little Carrie, took care of all of Mary's chores so Mary could work more sewing. They banded together, and the pride that they felt when they brought that money to Olson's Mercantile to pay off that debt was, they were beaming. They were so prideful. They were so happy that they were able to pull together as a family and knock out this debt. I think that sometimes we're all a little bit afraid to tell our children what's going on. We don't want to pull back and not spend on the things that they've grown accustomed to because we're ashamed, or we don't want them to be mad at us. But pulling together and banding together for a common goal can really make that family bond a little bit stronger. Find a way to make some more money. This is my favorite scene out of all of the scenes. It's season 1, episode 3, when Carolyn brings her eggs to Mrs. Olson so they can sell them at the Mercantile. If I could have left this clip for you, I totally would have. I don't know how YouTube works with the whole using copyrighted material things, and I didn't want to get in trouble. So let me set the scene for you. Carolyn goes into the Mercantile and wants to sell the eggs. Brown eggs go less than 4 cents a dozen. Carolyn says that she gave the white eggs to her husband to bring to work so he could sell them because the men there are paying more than 4 cents a dozen. Well, Mrs. Olson gets a bee in her bonnet and says that she can't match the prices for the brown eggs because brown eggs are less than the white eggs. So Carolyn decides to pick up her basket and go sell them someplace else. Well, then of course Mrs. Olson doesn't want that, and you know how she gets. So she basically said, let's work out a deal here. We'll give you, for the brown eggs, we'll give you the same price. So it was a really nice lesson in negotiation, and maybe even a little lesson on how to deal with a bit of a bully. But I loved that Carolyn stood her ground and stood up to Mrs. Olson in this episode and got her money. The whole point, I suppose, is they're selling eggs to the Mercantile. Not only are they using the eggs for their own personal consumption, but they're making a little bit of money at the Mercantile by having them sell the eggs. If you're working on paycheck to paycheck cycle and you're trying to find ways to have more money, consider selling something. It could be so much. There's a place up the road from us that has a little roadside stand, and she sells breads and cakes and cookies and muffins and pies. My really good friend has a beef jerky business that she and her husband make beef jerky to sell. Another friend made candles to sell. Somebody else I know in town just makes a dozen cookies. She'll post them on Facebook and people love her cookies. There's not a lot of variety there. She really sticks to a few different options, which makes her business better. There's also an option of, if you can, a part-time job or a second job, or even asking for overtime at your regular job. It makes it a little bit hard if you have kids, but there are also lots of different options of working from home to make a little bit more money. If you don't have the money to buy, then you don't buy. This leads into a great opportunity for many people to do a spending freeze. If the Ingalls family didn't have the money, they just didn't buy. But putting that into today's society and a tip for today's living, a spending freeze, whether it be a weekend, one day, a month, or like me, an entire year, then you can really hone in on your wants versus your needs and not buying things that you just don't need. This is a great way to do a little bit of a reset. If you can reset your budget and reset your finances to pull out the most important things first and all of the fluff that you may actually find you spend on, then you can reset your budget to meet the needs that you might have. Doing a spending freeze is a lot of fun. It kind of gamifies the whole budgeting process, and you could even consider giving yourself a reward after that process. It might be an ice cream cone, it might be a cup of coffee, it might be going to the used bookstore with $10. Whatever it may be for you that fits your needs and the things that you love might be a nice payoff for spending a lot less money than you normally would. I hope these tips on how to curb the whole paycheck to paycheck cycle really helped. It was a lot of fun rewatching episodes of Little House on the Prairie to find these tips. And I hope you can learn something from Carolyn, Charles, Laura, Mary, and Carrie. If you'd like these kinds of videos, I'd love to have you into the Frozen Pennies community. Subscribe and hit that like button. And I'm going to leave a couple of videos above that you might enjoy, and we'll see you there. Have a great day, everybody. I truly appreciate you, and bye-bye.